But today, I want to draw on two things. One, I want to highlight some of the comments that Marcus makes in the quotes that we provided as our lead-in into this morning. I want to highlight 6 points that he says in his understanding and definition of religion. Okay. And as you know, I'll be sending out those quotes to you in another week or two so you can reflect on them. We're completely in your own circles. But I'm going to highlight his 6 points of how he understands religion. And I think that that's an important backdrop for what we are going to be talking about today, where I will be drawing from William Lynch's book, Images of Hope. This is a book that Art Dewey, our guest from last month, commented on. William Lynch talks about hope, and he also talks about imagination, and he talks about something that he describes as the absolutizing spirit. And I want us to consider his thoughts about imagination, hope, and the absolutizing spirit in relationship to how we talk about religion. Okay, so I will get to all of that. But first, Jeff, why don't you orient us to the plenary time? That's an opportunity for you to engage with some of the thoughts I've put out there and share your own insights and what some of my thoughts have prompted for you. But Jeff will orient us a little bit to how to raise your hand and all of that. So, hi, Jeff.
Good morning, Marianne.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Thanks. You too.
Welcome, everybody who can make it on this third, not second Saturday. It's funny because you normally would think that the 15th would not be an unusual second Saturday, but here we are. So this is a time, really, the way I've come to look at plenary, Marianne, is that it's a time in which we build this community. And so I think that it's a really important time for those of you who come and join us every month to really interact with one another and with Marianne, and to really wrestle with and question and challenge both each other and the ideas that are being shared. So this time will be, I'll kind of moderate that time by inviting you, if you have a comment or a question, to go down to, there's a little heart at the bottom of the Zoom window, and that says react. And if you click on that, you'll see a raised hand, and you can put up a hand that'll show in your video screen, and I'll know that you'd like to speak. When you're called on, if you'd unmute yourself, and if you can just look at the name that's in there. I know some of you have the name below your beautiful face says something like church something or Zoom user. If you could actually put your own name on there, then I'll know that I'll be calling on you and not whatever it is that it says on your video screen. And then you'll have 2 minutes to share what you have to share. It's a really helpful thing if you can compose what you'd like to say before you raise that hand. If some of you are like me and sort of an external processor, you sort of think out loud. That doesn't work so well in this medium, because we want as many people as possible to have a chance to speak. So if you can keep your comments to 2 minutes, I'll be keeping track of that. And if you start to go over 2 minutes, I'll just put up a finger like this as a gentle reminder that it's time for you to finish what you have to say so other people can speak. So thanks, Marianne. I look forward to hearing what you have to share with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for that welcome. Great. Okay. Let me highlight 6 points that Marcus makes. These are drawn from one of it's a book that's a compilation of his works that sort of spans his lifetime. The book is called Days of Awe and Wonder, How to Be Christian in the 21st Century. And this is actually a compilation of his work that was published after his death. His editor and myself helped to pull that together. But these 6 descriptions of religion, I think, are interesting, and I am eager to know what you make of them, okay? As you know, religion is sort of defined very broadly as, the human quest for meaning, okay? And with that in mind, let me say that Marcus's first point is that religion originates within a particular culture, okay? That religions emerge from a particular language and symbol system. It is a way of construing or constructing the world, okay? Maybe, an attempt to try to understand what this experience of being a human being is, okay? So Marcus reminds us that religions originate in a particular culture with its particular language and symbols, okay? And this is called, and this is a phrase of George Lindbeck's, who taught at Yale, these are religions, the great historical religions, okay? Let me also mention that. The great historical religions are cultural linguistic traditions, okay? It's kind of a fancy way to describe that. Second point, and a corollary to that, is that religions are human constructions. They are human creations. They are imaginative human constructions. And I'll say more about imagination in just a little bit. Another way of saying that is that the stories of religious traditions, we make them up. We make them up in an effort to try to express something of our experience of our existence. Third point Marcus makes, and I think this is a really important point. For me, this is really central, that religions, okay, even as they are linguistic, cultural linguistic traditions, and even as they are human creations and constructions, religions are responses to what Marx says, to the experience of the sacred. So religions are a response to, again, this mystery that we are here at all. They are responses to the hollowness of the everyday, as Martin Buber might say. They are responses to what William James calls the more. So even though religions are human products, they are created in response to the experience of the sacred, which every culture, every human being, no matter in what culture they find themselves, experiences, okay? So that, I think, is an important thing to remember about the great the historical religious traditions. They are responses to the sacred, to the holy, to God, to mystery. Fourth comment he makes, and this he borrows from Houston Smith, is that religions, in the way that he's talking about them, they are wisdom traditions. And by that he means that religions as wisdom traditions ask the question, how then shall we live? What is life about? And this is also an effort in maybe trying to make sense of or find meaning in, or how do we story our existence? And religions, the historical religions, are an accumulation of wisdom over the centuries. And that shifts and changes and modifies. Okay. But at their best, religions are wisdom traditions. And therefore, I think one of our questions is, well, what kind of story do we want to live by? And why? Okay. What kind of stories do we tell? And why? A fifth point Marcus makes is that religions, I mean, in the best sense of the word, religions, they are means of transformation. And transformation of the self at the deepest level. I'm not really keen on talking about that as being the true self. I think, we're humans. Humans are humans, and the self is the self. But the self at the deepest level, okay, that religions seek to transform what it means to be human, to aid what it means to be human, to become more compassionate. To become more compassionate as human beings, to become more present to not only oneself, but to one another and to the marvels and mystery of the world. Okay. So they're means of transformation, not so much a belief system. But I'll say more about that in just a second. He finally says that religions are what he calls sacraments of the sacred. And by that, he means that they mediate the very spirit that they affirm. So that religions are really not about believing, as we tend to think in Western Christianity. The Enlightenment has had a big effect on that emphasis on believing, but that religion is not so much about believing and insisting on that as it is to mediate what Arthur Dewey called last month an effective presence. So I just think that's interesting to keep in mind. And that when, let me see, do I want to say one more thing about that? That when religions start moving more towards a focus on doctrine or rational analysis, on explaining rather than describing, that it tends to lose its connection to its true creative and imaginative roots. Okay. And that when religions emphasize faith systems or belief systems, or even dare to insert that theirs is infallible, then religions then tend to become authoritarian. And that rigid infallibility, those systems of knowledge, those infallible systems of knowledge, are called these days pseudo sciences. And I think sometimes today religion is by many considered more of a pseudoscience than it is a source of wisdom. So Marcus wants us to remember sort of what the source of religions are, that their expressions, their creative and imaginative expressions and responses to the mystery of our existence. And as we've been talking about, theopoetics is concerned with this very thing. It insists that we need to recover a poetic imagination if we are to understand properly what are religions. Okay. So, because a theopoetic understanding emphasizes more a phrase of Shakespeare's, seeing feelingly, which I know a very good friend of mine has a verse reaction to that phrase, seeing feelingly. But I think what that acknowledges is that our seeing is not just mind, it's mind and heart and senses and wonderment. And that theopoetics wants to recover that sense of that imaginative, creative aspect of expression in religious traditions. So I will be interested to know how you respond to those 6 points about what religions are and what they intend to serve. And what they intend to serve is what is real. What is real? And this is where I want to turn to William Lynch. William Lynch suggests that the imagination is the search or this in service of reality. Imagination is in service of reality. That imagination are the forces that we bring to bear on our concrete experiences of the world to form proper images of it. And that what is real, what is possible, even if it isn't here yet, that is imagination's task, is to find a way through fantasy to move us toward what is real, toward reality. Martin Buber says that hope imagines the real. So there's a deep connection for Lynch between imagination, as he's describing it. It is the movement, the search, the impulse, the desire for the real, for reality. That is also part of what it means to hope, is to hope for what is real and to live from that, to hope. Imagination can be healing and can help us cope, but not to evade what is real. And he calls this the realistic imagination. Okay. And part of the realistic imagination wants to come up with images that create true images of birth, life, death, men, women, God, love. That imagination, as I've just said, is the ally of hope. And that hope is at the very center and very heart of what it means to be human. That, as I said a minute ago, that hope and the longing, the desire for reality are deeply linked. He also says that when we imagine and when we hope, that we do not do that alone, that we imagine with, is how he puts it, that we insist on and trust a kind of mutuality, that my call for hope, my call for possibility, my call for what may yet come, that there'll be a response to that, and a human response to that. So that hope and imagination is all about the human need for help and the human capacity to help. that hope and imagination, that these are sort of ways out of the complexities of life. Because if we don't have hope, if we don't have a sense of possibility, if we don't have a sense of the surprise, a surprise that, you know, that there'll be no wishing, that we'll do nothing, that there will be no next step. He also says, though, that hope knows its limits. It knows its limits because it's dealing with reality. Okay. So hope is an imagination. They are allies. What he calls the absolutizing spirit is not an ally of hope. And that imagination, as he's describing it, is the enemy of a spirit of absolutizing, or the instinct to absolutize. Now, he doesn't talk about the absolutizing spirit. He doesn't use the word imagination. He puts this absolutizing spirit more in the realm of fantasy. And he says and by the way, we all have this need to absolutize. We all have that tendency in us. We all have that need. But he suggests that that absolutizing spirit or instinct is not in care of or service of what is human. That it is more about fantasy and the unreal. That the absolutizing spirit, what it demands is perfection. What it insists is perfection. What it claims is that there is a kind of purity that we need to seek. That the absolutizing spirit expects everything. It criticizes everything. It concerns itself with certainties. There's one right way. It tends to be authoritarian. It drives out other possibilities. Somebody said the noble dream of perfection makes cynics of us all. Makes cynics of us all, because perfectionism is not attainable. It is a false hope. It is the enemy of what it means to be human. So Lynch talks about how this absolutizing spirit is really a spirit of hopelessness. It tends to take a part of something and make it the whole. It picks up one piece of something and it absolutizes it. It tends to magnify. It tends to be extravagant. It has limitless expectation. It tends to be loud. It is not in service of what it means to be human. Somebody else said, I wish I could remember who, but that the world is incorrigibly plural. The world is incorrigibly plural. The absolute spirit or the absolute instinct in us will fight against that and will rather claim categories of purity and perfection. And this becomes dogmatic, it becomes tyrannical. It may claim a kind of ultimate quote unquote reality, but Lynch wants us to remember that it is not about reality. I mean, it's a kind of unscrupulous optimism. It's a kind of ruthless optimism. This is the way, this is it. This is, and that right way, that absolutizing, those folks tend to know how the rest of us are supposed to live. And in that, absolutizing is its own kind of punishing optimism, okay? Because it claims things that are not true. It claims things that are not in service of what it means to be human. And it also tends to have a distrustful relationship of the world. It doesn't trust the world. It tends to be more hostile to the world. It's not friendly. And William Lynch in his book, he talks a lot about those who are well and those who are unwell. And he suggests that imagination is in service of what is real, and that human beings, what we really strive for, what we really long for, is what is real. That we're actually more comfortable with that. We can come to terms with what is real. The absolutizing spirit will tend to try to seduce us into possibilities that are truly impossible, not possible. And that is a kind of hopelessness. And that people who become too preoccupied with this absolutizing spirit will also in neuroses will tend to consider one aspect of their struggles and magnify it and say, this thing represents everything. And it's so overwhelming. And it's so big and it's so totalizing that I can't function within it. And so it makes us passive and incapable to take another step. So he thinks that this absolutizing spirit, which is part of the human psyche, but that it is not only an expression of unwellness, but it creates unwellness. It actually creates a kind of sickness. And that imagination, that it really seeks reality. It seeks more truthful images to express our experiences. That it is, as I said, in the service of healing and coping, not evading. And that the absolutizing spirit will have a tendency to make us lose our taste for ourselves, lose our sense of what is it to be human? What is it to be human? And to be human, part of that is to help and to need help. That's part of who we are, okay? So Lynch feels that it's really important that we all come to terms with giving up omnipotence, giving up fantasy, giving up false hope. To use a phrase of Bonhoeffer's, it's time to come of age. It's time to come to terms with what it means to be human and to be honest and realistic about that, because that is also so connected. That true experience of humanity is also so connected to our experience of hope and real possibilities. Okay. So I am curious to know what you think of these definitions. One being that imagination is about seeking reality. I don't know about you, but I often think about imagination and fantasy, or I get them confused, or I think that imagination, that fantasy is part of imagination. Lynch will say, no, that fantasy is part of the absolutizing spirit, which he does not put in the category of imagination, of real, genuine, human imagination, okay? And that the absolutizing spirit is an unwell perspective that absolutizes, and that in a sense that there is no such thing as a fixed, determinate absolute, that the world that we live in and that we come to discover and that we wonder about is not that at all. So he is calling us to take a look at how we imagine the world and how we imagine what is possible. And when I think about religion and its effort to respond to this mystery of existence and how we want to story that, how we imagine that, what we think is possible. I think when the absolutizing spirit gets affected, when the absolutizing spirit takes control over the religious need and impulse, I think it's unhealthy for the human spirit and for the human future. So, and that intrinsically it is hopeless, that the absolutizing spirit is a hopeless one. So, you know, we experience hopelessness. It's not denying that. We experience hopelessness and hope. This is all part also of the tension of what it means to be human. But I think it was G.K. Chesterton that said, I don't care where the water goes, just so long as it doesn't go into the wine. So don't let hopelessness contaminate hope. And we tend to do that. So Lynch is wanting us to make these distinctions and to hold them. And Lynch says that one of the best things in us as human beings, as healthy human beings, is that we can walk away from that absolutizing spirit. We can walk away from it. We can say, no, that is not what it is truly to be human. We can walk from it. And as someone else said, never run away from a fight, walk away from a fight. Because if you run, you might break your leg. Anyway, so what I'm sort of playing with today is how we imagine the world and religion's task, which is transformation, religion's response, which is to the mystery, and also knowing that in religion that we don't see things as clearly as we say we do, only as we are. You know, we see things as we are. So part of our task is to figure out where we stand. Where are we in talking about our story and living our story, in describing our story? And to, as I said a minute ago, to finally give up omnipotence and to give up fantasy and to give up false hope and come of age and to come to terms with what it means to be human, which in part is to love and be loved, and our deep need and desire to touch reality and be touched by it, and live from there. So we have plenty of time for conversation. I'd love to know what you think about Marcus's definition of religion, human constructions, but also responses to the sacred, responses to the mystery. And to William Lynch's comments that imagination is really seeks the real, and that fantasy tends to be ruled by an absolutizing spirit that is and perfection. It insists on perfection, and that's an impossibility, is not in service of what it means to be human, and that push for perfection or purity is actually a hopeless quest and is the cause of a lot of illness and unwellness and sickness of heart and mind in culture. So what do you think? And help me to think about this. And again, and also how we understand Christianity in light of imagination and the absolutizing spirit. Okay. So love to hear from I'd love to hear from you. Jeff, do you want to help us out? Help me out?
Yeah, I'm just coming on board here. A lot to think about, Marianne. Somebody here said this might be a good opening. Someone said, can you give examples of the absolutizing spirit?
Well, I can think of one psychological and one political. Psychological would be if I feel like, if I get, let's say, stuck in my own sense of incompetence. And of course, that comes from not only my actions, but also my upbringing. You know, it's like how I deal with disappointment or being disappointing for others or disappointed to myself. When an absolutizing spirit gets a hold of me, and it's a kind of neurosis, it magnifies that. It makes me think like, you know what, that's all I really am. You know, it's sort of, you know, I'm incompetent. I don't do this well. I can't do this. It magnifies, it's loud. It says, it robs me of any other sense of self. That becomes the operative sense of self that, you know, or let's say even in the Christian tradition, I am by nature sinful and unclean. Yikes.
Yeah.
Think if somebody were to take that and, you know, feed the absolute spirit with that. I am by nature sinful and unclean. So, you know, whatever else I do, it's not gonna take that away, you know. Or borrowing from Delmar Schwartz's poem, that when Jesus is presented as being this perfection himself, that, you know, he does everything so well, he can do anything. He's always watching us. We can't. And so whatever I try to do, in comparison, it's kind of hopeless because he's already done it all. Okay.
Yeah.
So that absolutizing spirit, I think, can get a hold of our own neuroses and our own insecurities and our own self-concerns. Absolutizing spirit's very self-concerned, and then magnifies it, makes it feel like it's going to take up all that, makes it part the whole. Okay.
The whole idea that Jesus is sinless, but we are born with original sin.
Original sin. And I mean, and there it is, right? So no matter what we do, the truth is we're really born with original sin. Now, whose idea was that, right? And remember, with religions and with all of this, we make this stuff up. But I'm not saying we don't do that for reasons, but we make it up. So why? Why do we go there? What do we think we're protecting ourselves from? What do we think how do we think that's being honest about ourselves? I mean, I just think we should be more critically observant of this kind of thing. So I think the absolutizing spirit, I mean, I think we deal with it. I think it deals with us, and it's part of it. Okay. But we let it have its upper hand. And when we're unwell, emotionally, whatever, it's powerfully effective. Okay. And I think we need one another's help to remind us about what it is to be human. And that even the premise of we are by nature sinful and unclean, I mean, we're not perfect, but that's not the point. We're not supposed to be. Okay. In terms of the absolutizing spirit in politics, I think any authoritarian government tends to absolutize its ideology and say, this is it. And this is sort of the pure way to go. And the reason that we're making the decisions that we're making is because there's a perfection, there's a goal, there's a better way. It's this way. And so we have to eliminate those things that are going to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of, the authoritarian imagination is fanatical. It's tyrannical. It's like it's this way. And that notion of pluralism or variety or differences or complexity or ambiguity. There's no room for ambiguity with the absolutizing spirit. And ambiguity is what we live with as human beings all the time.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's part of what, as Keats says, to cultivate this negative capability to deal with the ambiguities and uncertainties and tensions without irritably going after fact and reason.
Right.
You
Right.
know, to sort of accept it. So there's something about the absolutizing spirit that does not accept the realities of what it means to exist and be in existence, of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And we as human beings struggle with this all the time in terms of accepting our own, what is it to be human? I think
Yeah.
that is an underlying question of religion, not only what is the mystery, what is this that I'm responding to, but what then is it to be human in response to this?
Yep.
Okay. So what I appreciated about Lynch is that, I mean, for one thing, it was a new thought for me to think differently about imagination. As no, imagination is in service of the real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hope imagines the real.
Right.
Because if you're going to hope for something that isn't real, that's hopeless.
Right.
And I just hadn't thought about those things in that way. So as you,
Yeah.
all of you on Second Saturday who are getting to know me pretty well, I come across some thoughts or ideas, and then I share them with you. A lot of you are much better linear thinkers than I am, and you have different experiences, and you can bring some clarity or some questions to some of the things that I'm puzzling about as I think about not only Christianity in and for the 21st century, but what does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
And is Christianity or the religions, are they in service of us? Or, I mean, I just want you to help me think this through. And I appreciated Lynch's distinctions between imagination and the absolute instinct.
That's so interesting, Marianne, because I think we often hear people talk about, we need to deal with facts, not imagination,
Right,
as if facts and imagination are polar opposites.
right,
So this is a completely reframing of imagination
right.
and
And
tying it to hope and then to reality.
and then to reality. And facts, if they're isolated and not put contextually, facts become then
Come
these little absolutizing
yes,
as well. Okay,
right,
we need facts. We need to know what's what.
right,
And I dare say that as human beings, we can figure that out.
right,
I think we're made to know what is real and what is not. I mean, I'm not saying that entertainment or fantasy or whatever doesn't, have its. I'm not saying to eliminate that. Don't misunderstand me. But in terms of in search of the real, it's just getting me to rethink some things. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And you're right about facts that if they're isolated and made to be little absolute things without a context,
yeah.
So anyway, so folks, my dear Second Saturday community, help me out. What are you hearing? What is this prompting in you? What is making you think?
Yeah.
And thank you so much for that. Can you give an example? Because as you also know me pretty well, that I'm pretty abstract. And as one person said, a very good friend of mine said to me, Marianne, when I talk to you, you never include facts. So I don't always get all specific. That's why we have each other here, is to help us out with this kind of conversation. So
Yeah. Stephen Braun, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you raise your hand?
Stephen, I know you me. And
Can you
maybe
unmute? Can you unmute, Stephen?
I don't have, I can't read your lips as much as I'd like to. So talk to me. Talk to us, Steve.
Okay, did I hit it?
Yep,
Yeah,
you
you're
did.
there.
As I listened to the thoughts today so far,
Yeah,
I had a recollection that some wise person, I think long ago, in Middle Ages, said truth is can be found by knowing that it's the same for all persons in all places at all times. Well, that certainly winnows down all the tenets and doctrine.
right,
And so when you were talking and giving us some of Marcus's 6 points about religion, I'm
right,
thinking how William James and his uh, primary and secondary religion, how Messiah Eliot and the sacred and profane and the experience is so important. I'm thinking all of these things that I believe and I have experienced and know to be true, and what leads me to believe in religion sort of come out of an encounter.
okay,
Martin Buber's Eye Thou is another example. So when you have this encounter and you try to share it with anybody, you have to use words and you have to try to communicate the ineffable to a human. It doesn't work very well, hence the need for theopoetics and other forms. But so that was the first idea. The second idea was this absolutizing. It took me back to a graduate seminar on existentialism where the paradox of limits was discussed. I think Sartre came up with it. He said there is no grand freedom as an ideal or an absolute, because every time you make a choice, you're eliminating everything you didn't choose. But the only choice you have, that's the real freedom. So there's the paradox of limits from existentialism, and it's the same concept you said about this absolutizing an idea makes it unreal because it's unattainable and based in irreality, instead of being real and choosable and actual and human.
right.
Lastly, very last comment is this imagination. I had to do a devotional this morning for Advent for church, and I did something on Isaiah 32, 16, 18. And most of the time, I think about Prophetic Imagination by Bergman.
Yeah,
How
please
prophet
be upon
poets
him.
talk in two voices. They're warning most of the time, and now and again they'll be consoling. And so the one I chose was a voice of consolation after about many chapters of warning. So I think this imagination being hopeful, reality based, and different than fantasy, which can turn into that absolutizing irreality, is the last thought I'll close with. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephen, so much. And yes, your emphasis on how important experience is for us, also, that our experience and that the language we use can't always completely, I mean, the language we use is approximate. I think, and I like what you said, that that's why we need more quote unquote poetic language, symbolic.
Yeah.
Because the language itself cannot ultimately absolutize that which absolutize. But anyway, but yeah,
There's a Christian Century poem of the week. Today's is really good, and it's in the realm of your theopoetic conversation.
you have it right there.
No, I listened to it this morning, and that's where it is. And they do one a week, and they're always on Saturday.
Okay, great. So from Christian Century, poem of the week.
Right.
Is that right?
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Well,
Thank you, Stephen.
you find a printed copy of that and want to share that with us in this hour, please do. Okay. Anyway,
Yes.
I love what you've talked about with truth, absolutizing, and imagination. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Susan
Sign
D'Amico.
me up for your class, Steve.
Susan, can you unmute?
Hello.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. It's lovely
Hi.
to see everyone. I'm so glad to be here. This is so challenging and also such a release, because the idea of this absolutizing spirit gives a name to an experience, certainly in my life, in the Lutheran church I was raised in, my family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, business and so forth. And it's wonderful to put a name to feelings that are not actualized, but you're experiencing them all, and it gives a wonderful delineation about what is real and those feelings and the imagination. What a great way to parse apart the things that can be so painful and not understand. I do have a question, and I apologize if this is fundamental and something that I should have already gotten, but it comes up rather often in things, but it's like an assumption that you know what it means. And I'm wondering how the Enlightenment, and you spent little bit of reference during the sixth thing about religion and the sacredness of the sacraments. I'm just wondering if you can explain how the Enlightenment is a problem, because it seems to be that what it gave us was freedom and science and democracy. So I'm wondering what your reference to that means. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, that's just, that's so, I think that's a really important question. Because you're so right, Susie, that so much good came out of the Enlightenment. You know, I mean, it was sort of a corrective to superstition also, you know, and it helped us think and parse some things out. But I think it has also tended to emphasize and you know, Steve probably will have a better answer to this, and any number of you who've got better education than I do, but it tended to emphasize the rational.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to in trying to present a kind of clarifying model, it tends to be dualistic. And I think that in looking for a kind of clarity and fixedness, as though fixedness is clarity, can be a clarity, I think that in that, you know, endeavor, that it may have displaced the importance of non-knowing, unknowing, the apophatic, what, you know, to value that which we cannot fully measure, feel, computate, you know, that it reduces the complexity of existence to some measurables. And
so it doesn't account for the mystery, for the unknown, for the experiential.
I think that's right. And you know what? I don't think that it should be expected to. But if some of the methodology of the Enlightenment, if the expectation is that it's going to give us a much clearer, focused look on what is reality, that's an overstatement. Because I think reality is much more complex than that. So again, if you absolutize the tasks of the Enlightenment, I think we lose track of that imaginative, creative impulse that really runs through everything. So in trying to domesticate it, we might sacrifice some of its wildness.
Cool.
Thank
you.
But I think you get what I'm trying to get at, that and that if Enlightenment thinking moved Christianity in the 4th and 5th century decided that they were going to say what Christianity meant, right? So it didn't wait for the Enlightenment, but there is a tendency to explain rather than describe. And I think that that's what we just have to keep in mind that, you know, if it needs explaining, some things can't be explained.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
Thank you, Susie.
question is much, much better than my fumbling response. So
Oh,
note,
no.
note to other folks here on Psyche Saturday, keep Susie's question in mind about the
Yeah.
role of enlightenment.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks. Sheila Richards. Sheila, can you unmute yourself?
I have done so. Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I missed last month for the first time in years because I had programmed my own workshop that day dealing with angry with God. You might have enjoyed it. At any rate, today has been remarkable, and I've shared this before and I'll share it again. I don't know though. I can't see if anyone can see this. But at any rate, this is a funky angel by Story people out of Iowa. This was drawn in 1994. In my dream, the angel shrugged and said, "If we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination." And then she placed the world gently in the palm of my hand. And I respond to that with our conversation today that with imagination also in the palm of our hand gives us, and I have lived with imagination and loved it all my life. 10-year-old girl still inside me. But this is how we
girl
can
loves you back.
we can respond to these, the what we call the sacred wisdom traditions. We need the imagination and to guard against this idea that hopelessness contaminates our hope. Because right now, that's the world that we're living here in the United States. A lot of people are feeling a great deal of hopelessness. And with imagination, I see that as the way out, so to speak, the way to hope, the way to hope. And if there were some way to encourage imagination, all these things that you've said today and the quotes you've given and the things that others have said to encourage us to use that gift and to see this funky blue angel putting imagination and hope in the palm of our hands, that we can carry on. And not only that, but grow and have a sense of well-being.
Right. I
Mm.
think that's right. And not to forget that we have a certain amount of agency. We can act. We can walk away from that
Yes.
absolutizing spirit that says, no, this is what it is. This is where we're going. This is where I'm right. Only I can fix it. So you just follow the way, or you know, based on perfection or purity thing where this needs to be eliminated. It's like, come on, people, you know, don't let that so exhaust you that you lose touch with your own humanness.
Exactly. And especially to say, if we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination.
And now that language means more to me.
Yeah.
Or reading William Lynch, who wrote in 1965 or something like that. And some of his stuff is dated, but I really appreciated that insight because it gave me a different way of thinking about it. And yeah, and claiming imagination because we all have it. It's a deeply human capacity and it seeks reality.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So
Yeah.
don't be seduced by those loud, magnified voices that say otherwise. So
That contaminate our hope. I really liked that expression, the idea of
let
something
hopelessness
that
contaminate.
Contaminates hope.
our hope is all around us, and imagination is one of the ways out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Sheila. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that lies within us. We're capable of it. Yeah. And it's real. It's real. It has its limits, okay? It's real. but
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, I appreciate what you've said and holding this in the palm of our hand and in the depths of our hearts.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome.
I'm thinking of the song you played at the beginning, Marianne. No love, you're not alone.
That's right. Don't let it get you down.
Don't let it get you
There'll
down.
be another day. I swear the sun will rise. You know, it's like, no, love, you're not alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, it's difficult, but come on, love.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's one reason I'm playing that song this year.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. And Robert Granger, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. This is really fascinating. A couple of things regarding the question that was asked a little earlier about the impact of the Enlightenment on
Please.
our thinking. I'm going to put in the chat a link to a YouTube of a lecture that John Caputo gave a couple of years ago, where he describes with real clarity kind of what happened during the Enlightenment, and then goes on to also frame religion kind of in consistent with Marcus's 6 points in what you described this morning. Paul Tillich's idea of religion kind of as a horizontal thread that runs through everything, and how you put those together in the Enlightenment. It got broken. It got broken up into the duality and kind of pulled religion, that thread of religion, out and held it separately. But anyway, I'll put that in the quote or in the chat.
You put that really, really, really well. Thank you, Robert. Huge.
To me, the challenge that I have with the word real is sort of the same challenge I had with Eckhart Tolle's idea of living in the now. So, and it's kind of it's a linguistic issue, but it's also it's a perceptual issue. It's a way of thinking from that it's static. It's a noun as opposed to a verb. In other words, real versus the word reality, because in the word reality has a dynamics to it, and that leads to where I've gone in this space, which is the world of possibility, the world of becoming. It's not the power of now, it's the power of the becoming, what's happening. And imagination is the same way. Imagination, associated with the word of creativity. Creativity is a verb as opposed to creation, which is a fixed thing. So I like the idea of imagination is in service of reality, okay, as opposed to in service of the real. Or even further, imagination is in service of the becoming. And the idea of the becoming is both the current becoming, which does have a reality to it, and in service of the absolute becoming, which is the impossible.
Right.
And faith in the impossible. I mean, real hope. I mean, the difference between hope as wishful thinking,
Right.
and hope as real possibility, as the impossible becoming possible. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
No, this is really, really important. And
Mhm.
let me say that you are singing Jack Caputo. So
I know.
so much of what you're saying is so in line with Jack. And I thank you for the link. I know, Jeff, you'll send me a copy of the chat. I'll look forward to looking at that. Jack, as you know, is he's become a really important person in my own rethinking. And he's going to be our guest next month, by the way.
Oh, great.
So Jack will be with us in December. I'll mention that at our closing time too. One of the things that I want him to address is, putting an end to supernatural theism once and for all, because I think supernatural theism is very much captive to the absolutizing spirit. So, but we'll let Jack talk about that. But
Right.
I love what you're saying about the language between real and reality. I love that. And reality is being more dynamic and the real is being a noun. And I love that. And also the possibility of the impossible. Because Jack will talk about the possibility of what we don't know yet. Whereas absolutizing tends to make us think that the impossible is possible. Whereas Jack will say that what's possible is maybe what we think is impossible now, but it's really possible, right? And absolutizing tends to make us think that the impossible is possible. I mean, I know this is kind of tricky, what I'm saying here, but that hopefulness, that future, that longing for something that is to come, the possibilities, that's deeply human. That's the hope for a future that is not yet here. That's all very, this openness, open possibilities. That's so in line with what it means to be human and what we're capable of living into and making possible.
And quickly, just one thing that kind of goes with this is that reality is a mixed bag. I mean, and the difference between hope and faith. Hope is a chance that there is possibility, but that possibility can be what we don't want as much as what we do want. I mean, there's two sides to the coin. Faith, to me, is a belief that goodness will win in the end. That's faith. Hope is the fact that things are possible.
Yeah, and I agree. Reality is a mixed bag, but that's part of that tension that we live in.
Yeah.
And I think part of the imagination of hope is for us not to imagine that we're hopeless and helpless.
Yeah.
Don't imagine that, we could do better than that. But anyway,
Yeah.
Robert, what you've said is so important. And it's such a clear reflection of some of the things that Jack Caputo is helping me to try to understand.
Yeah.
And you've got it. So thank you for that. And don't miss next month because he'll be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. How about Richard Mallory? Richard, can you unmute?
Oh my goodness, I'm over here in the amen corner. I'm feeling electricity moving through my body.
Is that right?
Yes, that is right. And so many
I just
associations.
say hallelujah. It's all right.
I'm saying I'm with you. That's all I'm saying. Because it's, where to begin? Oh, yeah, the absolutizing just brings to mind how deadening groups and communities or churches can be where there's absolutizing. And as a young person,
let me just quickly say that we are often complicit with it.
Okay. Yes.
We're often complicit with this. But anyway, so back to you. I think that's what you're getting at.
No, that's good. My older siblings, 11 and 15 years older respectively, plunged deeply into fundamentalism when they were around 30 and I was around 20. The relationships that I could have with them went south because it wasn't, I had already been inoculated against going into fundamentalism by just good fortune. One being a wonderful undergraduate education where I just jumped into critical thinking, which is an enemy of absolutism. I didn't know such a thing existed in the world. So the whole.
I think you've never heard of it.
So I think And I'm also trained as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, besides being a clergy. The spirit of absolutism can be felt in the body.
Okay.
And it is a spirit of fear, control. And it says, it can be with conservative people, it can be with liberal people, it can be with progressive people, it can be with anti-progressive people.
Okay.
And it's subtle, and there may be some people in particular in the group who are setting the tone. Oops, Jeff, I had so much more to say.
Well, and I've interrupted him, so give him another 30.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I just appreciate so much the highlighting of this, that I think we collectively, who are aspiring for a better society and a freer society, it's what we're up against. And another dimension of the absolutizing spirit is shaming. It is a hallmark of control to shame people. And when there's also a spirit of competitiveness, the tendency towards shaming increases to browbeat one's quote, quote, opponent.
Yeah.
May I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
At this time of pre-Advent and Advent coming up, I'm reminded of Apocalyptic, of the books of Daniel and Revelation in particular. These are poetic images, and these are poetic images to give a secret to the people who know what's being talked about in Revelation, the horrors of the Roman Empire. And so these images of beast are used. And so then, it's poetry that's giving hope to beleaguered people. And it's a secret code.
Yeah.
And then all of that got, it got taken over by the crazy rapture people.
Yep. This is for another conversation. Maybe we can put, as Rachel Maddow would say, put a pin in this. But I think that the notion of a secret code, that's kind of Gnostic. And I think that is more in tune with the absolutizing spirit. And I think that the some of those apocalyptic images are also, yes, they're poetic, they're images, but they tend to be absolutizing too. So I think that it's a faulty attempt at a hopeful vision, but I think it's a faulty attempt. So I just think that apocalyptic is something we need to unpack.
Yeah, and the very center of apocalyptic is unveiling.
Fair enough.
It is truth telling.
Fair enough, and there are kinder ways to do that.
Yeah, the dog Toto pulls the curtain aside, and there's the apocalyptic moment. The emperor is exposed.
Right, and granted that seeing the absolutizing spirit would rather be in the dark because it doesn't want its proportions and its limitedness to be exposed. So, but anyway, very interesting and good for your community that's going to be grappling with apocalyptic, quote unquote, end of world ideas of Advent.
Maybe it's about the beginning of the world.
Yes.
Thanks
end
very
of
much.
The world, not the world, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll continue this. Love it.
Thank you, Richard. Lynn Tolk, do you want to unmute?
Yes. Oh, I'm so grateful for everybody who has spoken up today. I would love to respond to all of them, but I can't do that in 2 minutes. So just thank you all. I would like to just describe an experience I had decades ago, which altered the course of my life, really. A period of intense grief, which led me into despair. And so far that I've reached the point of finding the place in myself that I was most afraid and walked right into it. And the minute I did that, of course, I had the experience of the compassionate presence that lasted as long as I could endure that experience. And it really did make a big difference in my life. But the thing about it was that I got no answers. I got no images. I got no face of God, not even the backside, just compassion, nothing. And I was reminded of Moses, not getting a name out of God until he said, I've got to have something to tell people. And so God just says, I am. Otherwise interpreted as I am becoming, which may have been the real beginning of process theology. But it made it difficult because every time I sit down, I do centering prayer, and every time I sit down, I remind myself that I don't know what I am responding to or who, and that's okay. And I'm learning to just sit with that not knowing.
Yep. Yep. But what's interesting is that your sense is that you're responding to something.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and it's something more.
Right. As
Mm.
it's something within us, but beyond us as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Great.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah. All right.
We need to call
So,
him. He hasn't been called on.
yeah, that's what I was just going to do. Nancy Rogaine.
Oh, and there's
Nancy.
great. And I also see David Depew's hand up, which
Oh,
is.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Hi,
Marcy,
everyone.
no different things. Okay, Nancy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you for this very inspirational conversation. I wanted to think about with the absolutizing way of thinking and the spirit behind it. I wanted to reinforce the psychologist. I'm also a clinical psychologist. Fear as a motive for wanting to think like that, or for that spirit taking hold of us.
Mm,
And I'm thinking about children
mm,
and how we
yeah.
learn right from the
Yeah.
beginning,
Yeah.
which is contrast between this is up, this is down, this is right, this is wrong, this is
Well-
black, this is white. And we start there.
Even that
But some-
must be
but- Yeah, Lynn, why don't you turn your mic off? I think your mic is still on. There we
But
go.
some people, but the human brain is designed to evolve into both this and that thinking instead of just black and white thinking. But not everybody does that. And I can't say it's just trauma, because some people who have horrific childhood trauma do evolve into both this and that thinking. But it is the highest form of thinking, is to be able to hold two contradictory thoughts in your brain at the same time. So I just think when children grow up afraid, they have it, or hungry, or any of these terrible conditions we let children live in, it's harder for them to grow up into harder for the brain to finish developing into a more nuanced, complex way of thinking, because we hold on to the fear that we're not safe unless we know exactly what's right, what's wrong. And it's an effort to make ourselves more secure. So I just wanted to throw that into the pot.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay. Thank you for listening.
Oh, no, that's so important to recognize sort of these existential woundings that we have. And not all those wounds go away. I mean, to sort of use a story from the Christian tradition, the resurrected one still had wounds. His wounds,
Yeah.
visible.
When they did an autopsy on Einstein, they said that there was no difference in his brain. It wasn't much huger than anybody else's, really. But the corpus callosum, the part in the middle that helps the two sides of the brain weave together, was huge, because he could both think logically and creatively. I just think we want to encourage that in our children and in ourselves.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll stop now.
No, that's really good. And that's deep and wonderful and important healing work that it sounds like you are deeply part of.
Yeah.
That healing work of sort of integrating that logic and creativity and trying to bring healing to that.
Thank you, Nancy.
So thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for doing that. I'm glad I know that you're there.
Yeah. So would you like me to call on David Depew? I see you noticed David.
Well, I
David, do you
did.
want to unmute?
I don't want to jump the line here.
You're just fine. You're not jumping the line at all.
On this enlightenment question.
Excellent. Here's an expert. I say that to you.
Oh, yeah. Science becomes the dominant form of knowing.
Uh-huh.
And the idea is a proposition is guilty until proven innocent. Right. So you have these elaborate mechanisms, scientific method for verifying something or falsifying it. That's a kind of a mental Puritanism. The general idea in the beginning of the scientific revolution is that you can't trust your imagination. Now, the interesting thing for a person like William Lynch is that as modernity went
A
on,
Jesuit, incidentally.
yes, he was a Jesuit. He's basically a contemporary of Thomas Merton, and he has a very different solution to the same problems that they were dealing with. But I think he's partly, especially since he lived in New York, he taught at Fordham, very sensitive to this rise of what's called modernism in art, which is like science. It's a kind of Puritanism of the imagination. So I can prove that by a kind of a simple example that everybody knows. So there's this picture of a pipe by Magritte, I guess it is, right? Is that correct? And then underneath it, the title says in French, "This is not a pipe." The reason is that it's a painting. So this is a kind of disciplining. The imagination goes to the real or the reality. And then in modernist art, which is very spare and lean, you are disciplining the imagination the same way that science disciplines the imagination. And I think William Lynch hated that idea. He had this idea that the imagination is inherently analogical and that you move from one case to another in a kind of imagination. I would suppose he'd think that novelists would make better theologians than theologians because they have an analogical imagination. He defends, for instance, the Catholic Church's tolerance for what we regard as superstitions, folk superstitions. He thinks that these are people that are living mythically in contact with the world, the way you describe. And there's a polemical side of him, as there was in all pre-Vatican II Catholic theology. I think he would have approved of James Joyce, who thinks that basically in order to think is to recapitulate in images the entire history of your culture, right? And that's what Ulysses actually does. I think, on the other hand, this remark about the apocalypse or the book of Revelation, that's a kind of undisciplined imagination, a kind of run riot. I think that that's not exactly what he would have in mind as a disciplined and analogical imagination. Anyway, we do have this idea that a great philosopher earlier in the 20th century called downcast eyes. We are skeptical of everything, and including art. Art has become very puritanical, and I think that we ought to think about it. If you open it up, the natural sense of transcendence toward the divine is actually in good art. I don't see how you can get it out of it. Okay, those are my thoughts.
Wow. That is so interesting, David. Some of the things you brought up, that could be the prompting for a whole session. You and I need to go out for coffee and explore that. David is a friend of mine, and he also is a neighbor, so we both live in Bend.
Great.
But I love what you're suggesting about the analogical imagination. I think that's fascinating. David Tracy, of course, does a lot of work with that.
Yeah, but he built on Lynch.
Yeah,
Mm.
very, very interesting. And I think David Tracy is also important. So
Yes. Yes.
oh my. Okay. Well, good. I'm making a note of this to and by the way, Jack Caputo is somebody who could jump right in here and
Oh yeah.
I'm in over my head, but you and he could carry on. So anyway, thank you for this, and also the talking about modernism as well, and the discipline of the imagination, and maybe too much of it. Not the right kind of discipline or whatever, but we'll explore that. David, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. I'm hoping, Marianne, that
Are you there?
What happened?
there we go. There we
Yeah.
go. I there's still quite a few people with hands raised, and I'm hoping they can stay for our coffee time, because I think it's time for our closing to wrap up.
Okay.
And so John, Beth, Stephen, Ed, and Jackie, if you guys can join us for coffee hour. We have 15 minutes afterwards, and we'll continue giving you an opportunity.
And thank you, Jeff, because it's the names that you mentioned, I don't see. So isn't that, so you're exactly right. What we see in the lineup is not necessarily what you see in the lineup. So, yeah. Okay, well, let me make a couple of comments in our closing, and then yes, we'll continue for more conversation at coffee time. As I mentioned earlier, next month, December 13th, our next second Saturday, we'll have Jack Caputo as our guest. And Jack, I think, is just one of the great theologian, philosopher, theologian, theopoetic theologian today. So, and I've asked him to talk about something that's I know is near and dear to his heart, putting an end to supernatural theism, but why it's important that we put an end to supernatural theism. And I think it's really quite related to some of the things we've been talking about today concerning what William Lynch calls the absolutizing instinct. By the way, December 13th is St. Lucy's feast day, and St. Lucy is the patron saint of the blind. So we might need her help too. For the closing slides, I will, one of the closing slides is Arthur Dewey's poem, which is titled, "But Wisdom Always Gives Us a Choice." Someone earlier talked about freedom and choice and limit and choice, and sort of the paradoxes of freedom that it requires choice. But I really, Art shared this with us last month. I loved his poems. And this one begins with, "If you want to become imperial," and then he goes on with quite a description of what it means for us to become imperial. And at the very end of our quotes, I include the entire quote of from Art's poem, which includes a description of what does it mean for us to become imperial, okay? Because it's very descriptive of what we are living in today. Or, he says, "Live in the real world with me and learn how to crawl to be human. Experience failure, be at loss. Suffer in that skin, sorrow to the bone." Again, it's lovely descriptions, it's experiential, but don't think that you are alone in this, he concludes. The weeds of wisdom are everywhere, And I love this closing line. That is why I am so dangerous and so alive. Okay. So I'm closing with a poem by Art Dewey, because he talks about you being imperial or being human. Okay. Which we've talked about today. Also, as part of the closing slide is part of the poem by Delmore Schwartz. Start out like when intuition pierced the 12. And here you'll get a little sense of why that perfectionism that is projected on his understanding of Jesus. He was Jewish, incidentally, but this is a projection that we've all inherited. Why it's so, why it evokes such hopelessness. He says, you know, too much goodness is a boomerang, he says. And then the 12 speak in chorus, the 12 disciples. Unspeakable, unnatural goodness is risen and shines and never will ignore us. He glows forever in all consciousness. No matter what we do, he stares at it. He looks at us like all the stars look at us. And things will never be as they once were. We will never be as we once were. It takes away all of our sense of possibility and hope and even change. Okay. Anyway, so I've put some of his poem as a closing quote, as well as Amos Wilder's comments about the theopoetics. Now to move to our closing music. Our closing music is by Tom Waits. Tom Waits and Crystal Gale sing this together. It's the title of the song is Take Me Home, Take Me Home. And it may seem like a simple song, but I think that it speaks to really what's in all of our hearts. Take me home, you silly girl, or you silly boy. Put your arms around me. You've got to take me home. All the world's not round without you. I'm so sorry that I broke your heart. Please don't leave my side. Take me home, you silly girl, because I'm still in love with you. There's something about this song that sort of touches me in the midst of everything we've been talking about. And let me say concerning silly, a quote by W.H. Auden. Great thinkers and system builders, he says, are often silly like us. That's why I prefer poets and other artists who are content to express the human condition, not explain it to us. Great thinkers and system builders are often silly like us. That's why I often prefer poets and other artists who are content to express the human condition, not explain it to us. By the way, he was talking to William Butler Yeats about Heidegger. That's a quote from that conversation. How do we know this? Anyway, I wanted to share that quote with you. Enjoy Tom Waits and Crystal Gale. And for those who can stay, I'll see you in about 4 minutes. And for others of you, I look forward to seeing you on December 13th with Jack Caputo. Thank you so much for being able to be with us today on this third Saturday in November. See you next December, this coming December, for our second Saturday conversation.